Hey everyone, I'm Lotan, founder at kjvpictures.com. This is not going to be my typical type of video. Really, this channel is about making short educational videos for people to learn Bible from and to reach people, or at least somebody, in some way and bless them. But I feel like I should probably give you guys my testimony so that you know who's making these videos. There's a bit of a controversy around my name, and I haven't really responded to any of those things. And so I just wanted to be upfront with you guys and really say everything I have to here now that I'm putting this ministry forward online. And so this is just for full disclosure. I haven't prepped anything for this testimony, so you could probably expect a lot of cuts where I'm thinking of things to say, or I, start saying something and then it comes out wrong, so I start over again. This is kind of just on the whim, but I really felt like it was important to put out there, like I said, just for disclosure, and you guys know where I'm coming from and who I am a little bit. I guess we'll start with my testimony, and I've been saved now since 2018, September 3rd of 2018, actually. And I grew up in Virginia thinking that I was saved as a kid. Like, I went to Sunday school and stuff. I believed in God and I believed in Christ, but I didn't know what that meant. I kind of just believed it because, one, I think the natural state of human beings is to believe in something. And also, my mom went to church and stuff and took me to church. So I just kind of grew up, thinking, yeah, of course, this is just the way it is, through God and Jesus and church. Like I said, I didn't really know what it meant to be saved, and I know now that I was not saved. I never asked God to save me. I was not born again. So I grew up thinking that I was saved through elementary school, middle school, high school. But I would say in high school, here's a key of knowing that you're probably not saved, is my focus was not on anything religious or godly. It was on comic books, movies, girls, being cool, drinking alcohol. I had not tried drugs at that point yet, but I wanted to. I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I'd separated myself from the world, and I really wanted to see what the world was like. And in college, I started smoking pot, and that was really like the trigger of me rebelling against Christianity. And it seems like it was overnight, but it was over a period of probably a year, became not an atheist, but I was staunchly against Christianity. I did not like it. I could say I hated it. I hated my family for being Christians. I thought it was oppressive. I thought that they couldn't make up their own mind, so they had to go to a book, to make up their mind for them. Thought it was like a cop-out. And I was more of I fell into the hippie movement, really, like the spiritualism. And I would always say I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And started doing hallucinogen drugs like mushrooms, and I did acid and MDMA, and really just like the one love liberal type of movement is what I was in. I thought I had some sort of secret that no one else had, and that I was in touch with something that no one else was in touch with. And I was really figuring things out for myself. And that's kind of how it went for 13 years after I started college. And in those 13 years, I moved to California to pursue. First, I had no idea what I wanted to pursue. I just needed to get away from Virginia, and I became like a background actor in TV shows and stuff, which is something that anyone can do, and I don't recommend it because, one, you're in LA, which sucks, and 2, you're literally just wasting your life. So I went to LA, didn't know what I wanted to do, was doing that, and then I decided I wanted to go to art school. And that's something that I had been doing in my spare time. Art, like I said, I loved comic books when I was growing up, and decided, hey, this was something that I was okay at, just doodling in my notes at school, and maybe I could do this. So I went to school in San Francisco for 4 years, got my master's degree in fine arts. And yes, it took me 4 years. It should have taken me 3, but I switched my majors between like halfway through, from 3D animation to 2D animation. Yeah, so I graduated and I got my first job in LA working on an Adult Swim show in 2013 or 2012, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2012. I graduated in 2012, got a job like 6 months later, and then the show aired in 2013. And I steadily worked, for 8 years, basically, in TV animation on some big shows and some not so big shows. But I guess the point of me, explaining that too is, one, I know that in the Christian community, there's a distrust for people who work in Hollywood, and I completely understand that. I was not a Christian when I worked in Hollywood, and I could say I was into Satanism, at least the occult. I didn't really know it was Satanism, but I saw, things there in LA, and it was kind of popular to be into that kind of stuff. And there was a staunch, like, anti-Christian sentiment. But anyway, I identified myself when I was there in my job and my success. And it's not like I had financial success. You don't actually get paid that much as an artist. You get paid decent, but also you're living in LA, and LA is super expensive. But I didn't want people to judge me based on who I was. I wanted people to judge me based on what I was. And I just fell down a spiral of identifying myself in what I was doing, and who I was as a person fell to the wayside, and I got arrogant and I got cocky, and yeah, I don't, like I said, I hated Christianity. And so I can tell you the point that I changed, that I recognized, hey, maybe there is something to all this Christ stuff. But there wasn't like a single moment where God spoke to me and told me I was going to hell. And all that stuff is true. I was going to hell, but there was never like that point that, people have these incidents that made them a Christian. Mine was a gradual sort of, through prayer. My parents have been praying for me, for 13 years, basically. And there was definitely a divide there. We were separating ourselves. Like, I could not stand talking to my parents, and these are people that I loved, but I got to a point where I just didn't care anymore. They could have died, honestly. And I would have just been in LA. Nothing would have changed. I just wouldn't have talked to them on the phone every so often. And when we did talk on the phone, the conversation, there was like a spiritual warfare there. There was a battle. It was uncomfortable. And I don't like admitting this stuff, but this is where I was as a person. And like I said, I'd never been an atheist. I call it Satanism now that I'm a Christian and I know what it was. But really it was just the occult. And I got into, I did psychedelic drugs that got me in touch with these things, these spirits and stuff. So I thought that that there was something else out there. And I guess I say that because even though I wasn't a Christian, I was never part of the norm. I believed in conspiracy theories, aliens. I thought I was in contact with aliens, as crazy as that is. But the point of that is, I was always looking for something else, and I also had my skepticism of like the political landscape. And so I didn't vote for Obama. I thought Obama was just the part of the establishment, right? So that kind of made me different than most people that I was around. I actually really liked Ron Paul when I was going to school, even though I would not have said I was a Republican or even a conservative. I guess I would have called myself a libertarian at the time. But the point of that is I could still function around people that I worked with during that time when Obama was president. And even though I was sort of an oddball and people would make fun of me and think I was anti-flu shot, which to them made me just anti-vaccine, that kind of stuff. If I was one way, if I even hinted that I didn't agree with them, they just threw me all the way to as far right as they could. But we could still function with each other. Kind of like when I was in high school, I had Democrat friends and Republican friends and Christian friends and non-Christian friends, and we could all function. But in 2016, that changed. And this is part of this gradual process of what led me to Christianity. In 2016, when Trump was elected, I thought it was hilarious. I did not vote for Trump. I did not want him to be president, but I also didn't want Hillary to be president. And I kind of liked the idea of just somebody that wasn't part of the system being president. At the time, I had hoped it would have been like an educator or a scientist or something like that. But I was just along for the ride. I thought it was hilarious. I didn't really think the presidency had that much power anyway. So what difference did it make who was the president? But me being how I was, when it was okay around the people that I worked with and the people that were in my bubble in Hollywood, all of a sudden when Trump was elected president, it wasn't okay that I had the exact same opinions that I had before. I got lumped. I lost friends who blamed me for Trump being president, and I didn't even vote for Trump. But because I didn't vote against him, in California, by the way, where it wouldn't have mattered who I voted for, Hillary won California, I got blamed for that kind of stuff. And so it was kind of a slow journey, but I started sympathizing with the right, with conservatives. And I hadn't considered myself a conservative, but they were the only ones who also saw how ridiculous the other side was. And this is at the height of, well, I guess not the height, because now it's probably the height, but it was the start of the height of things like social justice reform and gender equality. And when I say gender equality, I don't mean the classic sense of gender equality. I mean whatever this new thing has become, gender identity, really. And me being a white male, I was part of the problem to them, to the people that I was around. And so at that time, I started getting into people on YouTube like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, and there were others too. It's really funny. Like I listened to Milo Yiannopoulos, I think is his name. I didn't like the guy, but I thought he was funny. But it was funny because my cousin had gone to an Ivy League school and was there was like an event where Milo got kicked out of one of these schools for being a white supremacist. He's not, by the way. And I'm not supporting Milo either. I'm telling the story for the sake of things that were happening that kind of led me on my journey. And I remember talking to her about an actual white supremacist that came on campus, Richard Spencer. And I was like, my point was going to be, I, being someone who I'm totally for freedom of speech, I wanted to hear what the guy said because I wanted to form arguments against what he was saying. And so there was an event where basically he wasn't allowed to talk, and I felt that was unfortunate because I really wanted to hear what he had to say. That way I could argue against it. When you can't hear someone's argument, you can't argue against it. And so I had just started to say, yeah, there was that white supremacist guy who came on your campus. And she said, oh, Milo. And I just looked at her and I was like, no, Milo's not a white supremacist. I had barely listened to Milo at that point. And because of that, I was like, okay, let me just check to see if this guy really is a white supremacist. And so I started watching his videos. And it was like, no, the dude is a gay, like he's married to a black guy. How is he a white supremacist? And I know there's arguments for that, but I mean, we're talking about marriage. You can't live with someone for the rest of your life if you actually don't like, if you're racist against their race. I understand like the kinky things anyway, I'll probably cut this out because it's ridiculous. I'm getting beside myself. The point is, I started listening to more of the right arguments because, and when I say right, I mean the political right arguments, because I couldn't even talk to the left. Any argument that I made that wasn't on their side, they threw me in with the category that I'm speaking of, like white supremacist. And Ben Shapiro, who's an Orthodox Jew, and they call him a Nazi. He's an Orthodox Jew. So I started having sympathy for the right, and then I started listening to their arguments, and it made sense to me. But I still wasn't saved. And you don't have to be a conservative to be a Christian. But I started sympathizing with that side, and it just so happens that there are more Christians on that side. So in turn, I also started sympathizing with Christians as well, even though the spiritual struggle with my family was at an all-time high, just because they were a Christian and I wasn't. But because I had nowhere to go, I started identifying myself with the right. And I still wasn't a Christian. So there was that emptiness in me. That's why I was trying to identify with something. It's why I identified with my job. It's why I identified with my political views. Now I just identify as a Christian because I know that in me dwells no good thing. Anything good in me now is Christ in me. And anything that I did then that I thought was good, it was for selfish reasons. And I'm not saying that just, to be down on myself and to try and look humble. Like it just was. I was a selfish person. And I do think that's our natural state too. People always say, oh, well, that's natural. And it's like, yeah, true. It is natural. But our natural state is us going to hell. That's why we need Christ to save us. But all this stuff started happening, and I started, separating myself from the people that I worked with, and I started getting a bad reputation with the people that I worked with. And then all of a sudden, the studio that I was working for opened up a branch out in Portland, in Oregon. And I thought at the time, I had no idea what Portland was like. I thought that, heck, it had to be better than LA. And physically, it was beautiful there. The trees and forests. I have a dog, so, walking him, and there's waterfalls and creeks. And Oregon's just a beautiful place. The Pacific Northwest is probably one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived in my life. and even been to in my life. And but if you know anything about Portland, they're even more politically left than LA, which is mind-boggling to even think about, because LA is ridiculously left. So when I was in Portland, I couldn't talk to anybody. I had no friends. Even the friends that could still kind of stand me in LA, they weren't there. And I didn't have Christ. So I was identifying in just me rebelling against the left. And I found refuge for a brief period of time. And I'm only mentioning this now because it was something that I completely forgot about. But it comes up later in this testimony. For about a month, I flirted with the idea of joining the Proud Boys. And not that I have really any problem with the Proud Boys as a group. I can condemn individual acts of, violence and stuff. I think there are bad people on both sides. But as a group, I just saw it as, a place to talk to other people who would actually listen to me, rather than I could not talk to anyone else. If I talked to anybody else on the left, I was a Nazi. So I had nowhere else to go. And so all my experience with the Proud Boys was me joining their Facebook page, talking to them on Facebook. I met up with one of them once. We had a good time at a bar. He was like ex-military. And in talking to him, I kind of got a better sense of what the Proud Boys were. And it wasn't really for me. And I appreciated them, and I just left. I left the group online, the Facebook group, and I didn't hang out with any one of them again. It was like I said, it was a brief period of my life where I didn't have any other escape. And during that time, now comes to how I got saved, even though you can kind of see there's this path of me rebelling and then a little bit of sympathy for the right, and then and Christians in general through sympathy for the right. And then just randomly on YouTube, because as I work, I'm just drawing all day for the job that I had. I can listen to anything I want to. I could have a TV show playing on the other monitor as I draw, or YouTube or a podcast, which is great. As an artist, even now, I get to listen to Bible sermons and stuff and really grow all day. And as I work. But at the time, I just had some YouTube random playlists going on. And out of nowhere, the book of Daniel came on, and the prophecy of Daniel, and interpreting the dream, and the statue, and how basically 4,000 years ago, this guy predicted everything that was happening now that I believed in. Not that the mainstream believe in, but because I was also a part of the occult and conspiracy theories, I did kind of see this trend. And the book of Daniel just hit it spot on for me. And I was like, man, this is crazy stuff, I've been looking all my life for clearer answers, and here it is in a Bible book that was written 3,000 years ago. And so that sparked me secretly going to a bookstore and buying my first Bible. And I say secretly because I was embarrassed about it. Like I said, I still did not like Christianity and didn't want to be associated with that. But I started reading the Bible. And it just wasn't too long after that I could not deny what I was reading. And the Bible says that faith comes from hearing, and hearing from the Word. Back in the day, you couldn't really read the Bible. You had to go to the synagogue, and they would read it for you. That's why they say faith comes from hearing, because you would hear it, and hearing from the Word. People who were reading the Word and reading it out loud. But now we have the ability to just read it ourselves. And so September 3rd, 2018, I got on my knees and asked God to forgive me and accept Christ. And I did not know really what that meant. but I knew that it was all real. God tells us to try him out, to test him. And before I accepted him, I did pray and ask him to show himself to me. And in his ways, he did. And since getting saved, it's just it's night and day. The information that I have now, it's unbelievable. How lost I was, and I could not see how lost I really was, and how lost the world is. And I'm not really going to go into it too much. I will go into briefly how I came to the Bible believing movement, the KJV movement, and that's because when I first got into Christianity in 2018, I almost immediately got caught up in the charismatic movement. And the Holy Spirit, for whatever reason, really led me fast. Like within 2 months of getting saved, I got turned on to the KJV Bible believing movement. And I've just been that way ever since. And so I've had 2.5 years of basically every day while I drawing, listening to great teachers like Peter S. Ruckman and Brian Denlinger on YouTube, and Jack Hyles and Steve Sturgeon, and just a bunch of other people who have such a work behind them. And it's undeniable. Like when you study the Bible, there's nothing that could lead me off of this truth. And that's why I'm making this channel, really, is to, there's so much good information out there. There's nothing that I can do to make that better. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a pastor, but I listen to preachers and pastors, and I have the ability, at least I think I do, to put together short, condensed videos that gives you a lot of information that will hopefully lead people to these other great teachers. So I would think of this channel as like an introductory channel, trying to kind of just using pictures and, the drawings, like my drawing ability to sort of just put things in front of you in a clean way. Ruckman used to make charts and stuff and draw. And if people are interested in them, there's just a lot of other great pastors and preachers that I'll link people to, and they can, listen to an 1.5-hour sermon versus my 5-minute video. But my testimony is not over. That's just how I became a Christian. And so once I became a Christian, I was still actually in Portland, working in Hollywood. And I started getting uneasy about it. Luckily, I did come clean with my family, that I got saved, and they were grateful. And I came back home to Virginia and got baptized with them. And it was a beautiful thing, a great thing to happen. I really I reconnected with them and just admitted, that I was wrong, and they forgave me. And part of my testimony is just the power of prayer, because like I said, it wasn't some event where I got into a car wreck and I saw Christ and I became a Christian. It was other people praying for me for years and years and years. And as far against, and much as I hated Christianity, and I could argue, I used to brag about being able to talk a Christian out of their own faith. And now I'm on the other side of that. Anyway, so I got baptized and I went back to work, and, I had bills to pay, but I started getting uneasy about the work that I was doing. Not that what I was doing necessarily was bad. I'm just drawing characters, right? But what they were going towards was bad. And there were so many jokes now that I see in the shows that I was working with that are just anti-God and making fun of Christianity. And it really just was unfortunate that I saw my work going towards that. But I had accepted a job that I really needed it for the money back in LA. And so I went back to LA just for a year. Actually, it was just a little bit, it was a little under a year. But I went back to LA to work on this new job. And at that point, made my decision. This was going to be the last thing I ever work on for Hollywood again. And I did not know what I would do afterwards. But I knew I had to stop the work. And I was thankful to God for giving me that one last job, for making some money and being able to move back home. But yeah, I had made the decision that that was going to be the case. And I told my parents that I was probably going to move back home, because without a job, you just can't survive in LA. And so I moved back home, and I was working for that job online, from home. I got permission to work from home. And there was definitely some spiritual things that were happening there that I'm not really going to talk about here. If they happen to come up in the future, I will. But I definitely felt God at work there and doing things for crazy, ridiculous things for me. And so I came back home, and I was working, and they offered me work on another season. And there was definitely tugging at my logical strings versus my heart strings, where logically I'm like, well, now I'm living in this cheaper place back in Virginia in the country. And man, if I could make LA money here, I could just save it. And I could go and do this ministry, which I started getting the idea to do. First was drawing tracks, which I have. I've gotten about 5 tracks, at the time of this recording. But then I was like, I could make some videos too. And it takes a long time to make these animated videos. So I kept kind of just putting it off. And I got offered this job on season 3. And I was really tugging at it. But God just laid on my heart, doesn't matter how long it takes to do this. If you keep putting it off, it's just going to take even longer. And maybe someone needs to listen to what I'm putting out there now. And so I made the decision not to go back. And so I contacted the people that I worked for via some sort of Skype we were using. I forget what it was called. It wasn't actually Skype, but it was something similar that we all worked with. And so I told them that I wasn't coming back. And they were sad, but they were like, if you ever want to come back, we'll have a job for you. And then things started getting really strange. And within a 3-day period, like, my life got completely flipped upside down. And first, I got a job offer with a different studio right afterwards that I had to say no to. And then basically, I got an offer for my dream to come true, which was my dream before I was a Christian, which was to have my own TV show. And I'm not saying that that would have happened, but the opportunity for it came. And I would have once again had to put aside what I'm doing now, this ministry. And it started just by making some tracks. And the opportunity was basically to pitch my own show for a European network, because I had some family in England and I had met some producers there, and they wanted a cartoon show for their network. And they knew me and that I had worked on some big name cartoons, and they wanted that kind of humor and style. And so I had to say no to that as well. And I kind of know what it was now, because right after I said no to that, that 1 month stint before I was saved, where I joined the Proud Boy Facebook group, someone in Antifa had hacked that Facebook group, and they got the video. Everyone who joined that group had to make an introductory video, which was just basically saying that they were a Western chauvinist. And chauvinist, like, by their definition, is just like someone who takes pride in their nation, right? And I wasn't a Christian at the time, and I thought America was the greatest country. ever. And I think America was the greatest country ever. Not anymore. And precisely for its diversity and all this great stuff that made our country great. But now and then just saying that makes you a Nazi somehow. And that's what happened. Basically, whoever hacked this put that video out online, and now I'm basically a Nazi to everyone that I used to work with, to any sort of potential studio that hires me again. They won't hire me. Now I'm grateful for all that. But at the time, it was definitely a, like, what is going on? And I know what was going on now is anything that happens to you, that Satan does to you, God gives him permission to do. And we know that from the book of Job. Satan had to go to God and ask his permission to do what he did to Job, and God gave him permission. And so I know that God gave Satan permission to do what he did with me. And the way I can see it now, and I didn't see it at the time, my life was kind of just falling apart at the time, was when I decided to do this ministry, Satan didn't want me to do it. And so he offered me my dream. He might not have given me my dream. Satan can offer a lot more and just not give it to you. I think I heard Peter Ruckman say once about all the people who sell their soul to the devil and become super, mega celebrities. How many more sold their soul and are just in a insane asylum now? And so maybe I would have gotten it, maybe I wouldn't have, but he offered me my dream, and I turned that down. And when I turned that down, he was basically like, okay, well, you're not going to take this, so instead I'll just slander your name. And hopefully, I think, in his eyes, that would also stop me from doing what I'm doing now with the ministry. And that's partly why I'm making this video too, is just a full disclosure of everything in my past. And so yeah, he basically slandered my name, and now I can't work anywhere in Hollywood. And I'll get phone calls sometimes, but these people just haven't looked me up online. And if I ever said yes, they would just look me up online, and they would see all the controversy around my name, and I know what happens with that. But I feel very fortunate, and I thank God for that, because I had no other choice but to just have full trust and faith in God and just proceed with this ministry. I told God this is what I wanted to do, and now I'm doing it. And it doesn't matter all these things that happened in between that drug me down and, tempted me to leave, because I'm full-fledged in it now, and nothing can take me away from that. I listened to a sermon recently by, I think it was Jack Hyles, that said that unshakable faith comes from having your faith shook. And when you go through something like that, then you know that you can continue. And yeah, your faith might have been shaken, but when you come out the other side, you're so much stronger than when something like that happens again. What can Satan do to me now? Physically, he can hurt me. He can hurt my family if God gives him permission, but all things come together for the good of them who believe. And I know that. And my family is saved, and they're going to heaven when they die. And I'm going to heaven when I die. And there's nothing more that I could ask for. And I don't know if this ministry will become successful. And I hope that it does, not in terms of, money, just in successful in just reaching somebody out there and saving them, or helping them learn. What else could I ask for? When I die and I go to heaven at the judgment seat of Christ, God asks me, what did I do? I would much rather say I put everything in a ministry and maybe saved one person than, I was fighting for a country that is now lost. which is what I would have done if I wasn't saved. Or I just worked all my life to become successful. I don't know. Maybe I'm not wording it right, but all the things that happened to me that led me to this point, I would not change. And I don't know where it's going to go from here on out, but it is all done in thanks. And in the hopes that somebody else can have what I have. And that I can have what other people have too. Other people who walk closer to God than I do. These are people that I admire now. And from the outside, it looks like I gave a lot up. But I've gained just so much more. And it's basically all I really wanted to say to you guys. I know this is probably going to be my longest video, and you're not really going to see my face again. This ministry is not about me or my past, but I really felt like I had to put all of that out there so that you guys have all the information. Because if you go online as a Christian and you see that I worked in Hollywood, like I still had the last part of a show that I worked on still hasn't come out yet. So it's going to come out probably next year, and it's going to look like I still work in Hollywood, but I don't. It's just some things take a really long time after leaving a show, a production. And so I don't work in Hollywood, and I'm not a proud boy, and I never was a proud boy. But I flirted with the idea when I was lost, before I had God, before I was saved. And there's nothing I can do about that. Just hope that somebody who might be in the same situation as I was in can maybe see this and know that good can come out of all of it. And that is what I wanted to say to you guys. And I hope that this ministry is a blessing for you. It's not my ministry, it's God's. And I just feel really blessed to be able to be a part of it and to help bring better people's messages and better teachers than myself. Be able to bring those teachings to you guys, and that you will find that relationship and that truth in the Bible and in Christ Jesus and in God. And yeah, that's really it. So thank you for watching, and leave comments in, maybe not in this video, but in other videos, and fellowship with me. And, you know, I'm not here to argue with people. I know there's going to be people who don't agree with what I'm saying, but that's because they're not Bible-believing Christians. If you have a problem with anything that I'm putting out on this channel, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with the Bible. And that is fine. You can have a problem with the Bible. But this channel is for people who want to learn from the Bible and what the Bible says. And God says that He magnifies His word above His own name. And the Bible is the word of God. And that is what this channel is about. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you're blessed by it. And I hope that my testimony doesn't discourage you from watching my videos. And if it does, I hope it doesn't discourage you from the Bible-believing movement. Find someone else that you trust in more. We're all on the same team, and if you are on our team, and if you are saved but you're still not on our team, well, I'll see you in heaven. I believe that once saved, always saved. And I think there is a great falling away in Bible knowledge in these last days, and a real thirst for people to get that knowledge. But that I'm not questioning your salvation. I'm questioning your walk with Christ, and we still have a lot to answer for after we're saved. And so that's really what I want to help people with. And yeah, that's it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks.